Welcome back to Streaming Media Connect 2024, our 13th Streaming Media Connect event. And this is our second session of the day, and this is going to be our keynote presentation from Cloudinary. We're going to be covering a broad array of topics this week, but one subject that is front of mind for virtually all of us, I would say, is ROI. In a few minutes, you'll hear a great presentation on automating video post-production and delivery processes to boost ROI, brought to you by Cloudinary. But before that, we're just going to have a short message from Cloudinary. Tyler, please roll it. Just a couple of quick housekeeping notes. The music that you were hearing before the session got started, we are doing a $50 Amazon gift card giveaway, and the winner will be the person who first accurately named the artist and the track, and we'll announce at the end of the session, and you must be present to win. The chat is open, so please chat in the chat, and we will have time for a few questions at the end of the session. So please put your questions in the Q&A, and we will get to as many as we can in the time we have here. And then any that we can't answer, if you can ask your questions anonymously, but if you do include your name with it and we don't get to your question, we'll be able to answer it after the session. Sessions from all 3 days will be available on the Streaming Media YouTube channel. The link is going to be in the chat for that. The full archive will be up in a couple of days. And now I'd like to welcome to the stage Kim Matenchuk, Managing Director of Video at Cloudinary, and Sam Brace, Senior Director of Customer Education and Community, also at Cloudinary. Please take it away. Welcome.
Thank you. Thanks so much for the introduction, Steve, and for the invitation to be here today. Sam and I are both excited to talk to you all about video and how you can use video on your websites, mobile applications, social media, and anywhere else you choose to boost ROI. Video is seen as a main driver of sales, and it can help people see what your product looks like in a more visual setting and with movement. It takes time and effort to get websites, mobile applications, and other elements up and running from an e-commerce perspective. And because of that, we want to speak to you about how to bring that interactivity, that movement-based experience into your environment to help boost conversions and see that return on investment. So the first topic here today is about why you should be thinking visual. Not just about the video itself, but holistically, why you should think about visual elements overall when you think about engagement. And obviously, the first place to start is really around focusing on increasing that click-through rate, that CTR. You probably have multiple ways to reach out to customers. It might be through social media, it might be through email marketing, but we want to make sure that whenever someone is learning about your product for the first time or going back to look at it for the second, third, fourth time before they make that decision to purchase, that they can see all of the elements that make them the most excited to actually click through. You want the strongest click-through rate possible. Also, as part of this journey, we want to make sure that we're helping you drive a conversion so that the path from click to cart to overall delivery is absolutely clean, simple, and without issues, and getting to that point with video can really help. It's important to note that speed to market is often an issue for many people. It isn't always that they can't just get a hold of the video or the image or that they don't want to use it. Often it's the time and resources it takes to bring that video forward. Think about this even just on imagery. Think about those photo shoots. There's all of the time that it takes to get the lighting right and all of those little elements and all of the people in place. And overall, the same thing is needed for video as well. But if we look at just one of the areas on the slide here, notice that it says 92% of marketers are frustrated with the time it takes to make their ideas reality. 92%. And I'm sure if you're sitting here today, you can probably resonate with that stat as well, right? All of the goals here are to make sure that you can get your great ideas moving from thought to website as fast as possible to bring that conversion rate up. This is just one of the topics that we're going to keep coming back to today. Another thing to note is something called the omni-channel experience. So you want to be able to provide a similar experience across all of your various outputs that we've been discussing: website, mobile application, social media presence, email, whatever else you're using. And you've probably noticed that we're going to refer back and forth to website, mobile apps, email interchangeably. So to us, regardless of where you want to put your content, you do want to make sure that it's as consistent as possible, and that is the omni-channel experience. You also need to remember that it might be that you want to make sure that that video or visual element is there, but it doesn't always have to be in its original form. Maybe you need just a snippet of it for an email purpose. Or maybe you need to adjust it a little bit because you want subtitles that are moving along as the person is on the social media clip. Or maybe you just need a 2 or 3 second clip to rotate and show the other side of the garment. All of this can be done very consistently. But it's also worth thinking about the video itself as the omni-channel experience. You can create all of those different variations, those transformed derivatives and versions from just one output file. So Sam will talk more about this later, and I have promised not to give away all of the spoiler alerts as we go through the session, but we'll come back to this one for sure, all with the goal of making sure that video is the shining star for your visual experience. Consumers love video because it shows your product in a more realistic setting. To feel confident about an online purchase, consumers need the visual experience that matches or exceeds what they get when they're in the store. So let's think about this. More than 70% of adults in the US already spend 2 or more hours a day watching short-form videos on their phones. Short-form videos are the ones that are less than 30 seconds or a minute. So video is absolutely an experience that they're already extremely comfortable with, and they're almost expecting when they're looking to purchase something online. Conversions are absolutely synonymous with video content, especially when there's a strong, actionable, exciting video there. And notice that it also says 89% of buyers purchase after watching a video. It really does help drive those conversions home, and something we should absolutely be considering wherever we can. There are also many reasons why brands love videos. 78% of brands rely on video to build user trust in their brands and products. So when we think about this part, you absolutely can build trust and confidence with images. However, even if you get it pixel perfect by focusing on the lighting and the angle and the drop shadow and the background and everything else, there is something different about having movement in video that really drives that trust and confidence to a much higher level than what you can achieve with video. So if you're looking at a garment on a model, you can see the model turning, you can see how it drapes and flows, you can see if it's going to wrinkle, you can see if it's shiny or matte, if it's laying the way that you want it to. All of those things make it much easier for that consumer to decide whether or not this is the product for them. And if they decide to buy it, they're also much less likely to return it and have overall satisfaction in your entire purchase process. So really, video can do a lot to help both the buyer and the brand feel confident in the selection. Let's talk about production, the shoot. There are a lot of different ways that video can be shot or displayed or captured. Now, this slide might look really familiar to some of you if you've taken a lot of time to do a pixel-perfect video shoot. You might be able to get very high-end videography done with amazing cameras, excellent lighting, people who are staging absolutely everything that you need them to stage to make sure that the details are just perfect. This can take a lot of time and effort and people, and all of these things combined can often mean a lot of money. Doesn't make it right or wrong. It's just one of the ways that people do shoot video. On the flip side, though, for a lot of other people, it's a little more bare bones than that. You might be holed up in a tiny room crammed with as many lights as possible. On the video, it will look bright and beautiful and shadowless, but in reality, you're probably in a windowless room with no air conditioning just because you're trying to block out all of the sound, and it's the only quiet place you can find. You might be doing it yourself without any level of sophistication. That was in our previous example, and that's okay too. Lots of times video is still shot like this. But regardless of how you shoot the video or how you make it, you're doing it, you're investing all of that time and effort and energy because you want video to be the center star. So once you get the video shot, now comes in the hard work, the production side. There is a lot of work that has to be done on selecting and editing and transforming and optimizing those videos so that you can use them in the channels that you need. And this is often where the speed challenge comes in. So as you can see here, 58% of marketers have said that the amount of time and skill it takes to go from photo shoot to video shoot all the way to the website was one of their top challenges. Almost half of marketers have said that creating the video assets themselves, the production portion of it, was their biggest barrier. So they don't even necessarily have the opportunity to use the videos because sometimes they can't even get them created. And 80% of companies have said that if they could get the triangle of concerns sorted out for video, being time, resources, and budget, they would use more videos for sure. All right, so what happens when you actually can get them? You have to think about a lot of workflow challenges that come into play, and this is sometimes why it's extremely complicated. So if you miss one of the steps, you might have to go all the way back to the start, or you might have to go all the way back to the second step. So you might need a photo studio to create the brand content. That needs to be approved. If you're bringing your assets into internal storage, you need to make sure that it's done correctly and that the metadata and the tagging is in place so that you can find it again to deliver or stream it. You might need to link to a product information management system, PIMS, or e-com systems, because this is where all the payments are taking place. You need to ensure that there's no duplication of images or rights and that everything is associated with the right SKUs. And you need to make sure that all of the stakeholders are going through this process with you and signing off assets as they're ready to use. So it can be complicated, even with steps that aren't highlighted here. But the great news is that this is definitely addressable. There are ways to make your life so much easier around this because you really do want to work with video. Statistics show consumers want you to work with video and brands want to work with video. So let's think about one more thing before we segue to Sam. The last reason why a lot of brands don't use video is because they think it's too expensive. It's just not in the budget for the time or resources that it takes to create that video. All of those post-production people, all of the things that are needed on the post-production side, it can add up, and you want to make sure that your budget doesn't slide out of scale. We hear you. We hear a lot of people talking about this. It's actually one of the #1 things that comes up in any conversation. But the great news is there are a ton of ways that you can actually do this to reduce your post-production costs and to do things much faster and easier. So I've promised Sam I would not give away all of his content in the first bit. So Sam, without giving away all of the spoilers, over to you. Can you show us some practical ways that we can get started with video?
Absolutely. Kim, thank you for an amazing explanation on why people should be thinking about video. But now we're going to talk to you a little bit about how to make sure it happens. And what this ultimately is talking about is that there are many different ways to manage video. Kim talked about many of these in the explanation that she provided about why brands want to use video. But how do you manage this video, but do so at scale? Because once you start getting into hundreds of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of assets, how can you make sure that all of that video looks and performs the way that it should across your websites, your mobile applications, your software projects, and other important projects as well? Well, let's first talk about this from a sense of artificial intelligence, AI. Now, this is not an AI talk, but it is important to note that many of the factors that allow you to scale the overall video efforts, especially when it comes to pre-production, post-production, the actual production stages itself, it comes from something that artificial intelligence provides called object detection. And what this means is if we take a look at an example like this image here, we can see that through the power of AI, it can determine certain objects that are found inside of the image, such as this is clothing. This person is a person. We can see that her arm is accentuated. The same concept applies for video. And as we can see here with this slide, regardless if your viewer is doing this on a portrait viewport or a landscape portrait, whatever it happens to be, it allows for it to ensure that it is going to stay in frame. So we can notice here that the focal point, the most interesting part of this video, is the surfer. And rather than that surfer potentially going out of frame, it ensures that we are able to focus on that object and ensure the most interesting aspect always stays in frame, regardless of the user's viewport. So this is a concept to just make sure that we understand that we're not asking for you to create brand new videos with AI, but we're asking for you to use a lot of the great work that you're doing with video production and allow for object detection to take place to ensure the best, most optimal viewing experience. One area to also consider with this is the fact that you probably have images and you may not have video. This is a step that you can easily take by creating movement and animation with a lot of the images that you have today. As an example, you can go ahead and create a video that is concatenated from existing images. You can even do this programmatically, where you're able to set the start times, the end times, the transition times, all of that very, very simply, just by indicating which images need to be included in the video. It can also be an area where you apply something called the zoom pan effect. I also like to call this the Ken Burns effect, because we've all probably seen a documentary where the object slowly pans across the screen while somebody is narrating, but it also is where it's creating movement against a static image. This is a great way to be able to get someone's eye and attention onto that, so that way they can focus on the most interesting aspect, zoom in and onto that, and you're creating that video-like effect without ever having to go through the video production process itself. But it is also to say that there are many cases where you might want to grab stills from video. You might have done that amazing shoot that Kim had talked about, and you want to be able to extract some of those various elements and use it for email marketing, maybe use it for text-based marketing. This is actually an example of a customer that has uses for text-based marketing, being able to get people that are insiders to know all of the details about the latest line coming from their jewelry. But it all came from videography, and it even could have come from imagery as well, to be able to create this type of movement and animation that we show. The thing to remember is that movement and animation is something that typically buyers really enjoy, because there's not a lot of companies and organizations out there that are doing it well. As we can see here, 42% higher click-through rate on emails containing animated images alone, which of course can come from video or can be video based in some type of format. What's interesting about this is that once they click through, they typically convert. We're seeing 103% increases in the overall conversion rate compared to previous examples, and also 109% increase in the overall revenue in the studies that we are citing in this case. This is a fantastic example on how to be able to deliver something with movement and animation, maybe with your existing assets that are available within your organization. It is also important to point out that you might not have those assets in the organization that you want to use. But what's great is that with the power of video and with the power of your customers and buyers, you can use what we call user-generated content. People that are wearing your clothes, using your shampoo, driving your cars, or any of the above. And what's great about that is that what's wonderful is it shows what this looks like in a realistic setting. And with video, providing that level of trust and authenticity that Kim had just mentioned, now you're adding even more because you're able to see what this looks like on a real person, not a model, not someone that is necessarily as groomed as necessarily what you'd find in those pixel perfect photo shoots, but using it in real life scenarios. And what we're seeing in this case is that you can ensure that, one, you can transform this to display on all of your mobile devices, websites, you can crop, resize, you can change formats, but it is also to say you can moderate, ensuring that with the power of AI and the power of video, you can ensure that what is coming that's user-generated is aligned to your brand. So that way, if there's any suggested content or inappropriate content or explicit content, AI can find that and make sure that that content never makes its way to be able to be delivered to all of your various outputs. So this is a wonderful factor. But the key thing to remember is that if you're thinking about video, you should also be thinking about video you create and video that your customers create, because one of the best ways to take video is your phone, and many of your buyers have that today. Also, you probably are working with companies and buyers that are not necessarily right next door to you and may not speak the same language that you do. This is a great way to be able to expose text overlays that might provide some level of localization. It also is a case where the text overlay concepts that can be applied for videos also allow for you to indicate whether something's on sale or whether something's exclusive to your site, or maybe it's where it's brand new. And programmatically, you can add these dynamic types of fields so that way when things go on sale, you're automatically applying the overlay. Or to my earlier point about localization, this is where if you are providing this to a French-speaking audience, this can be appearing in French, and it can indicate that through several indicators that are dynamic variables. What's also nice about this is it's not just tied to these product images that are used for more advertising type of purposes. You can even think about this from a video player type of experience where subtitles and captions, those are text overlays, and they can be seen as layers. You can style them. You can ensure that you provide multiple tracks. So if someone is Spanish speaking compared to English, you're providing that level of accessibility for them. Similarly, let's say that you have various audio tracks, maybe one that you recorded in French compared to one that was recorded in English. That is also where you can provide the same type of experience through the video player. So video layers, whether they're audio, whether they're video, whether they're text-based, this is something that is absolutely able to be done programmatically, but also a great way to take one piece of content and scale it in a global audience. The other area that's interesting to point out is that when we talk about 3D content, and 3D, of course, is its own format. It's not necessarily video, but there are many ways that you can go ahead and create that type of experience where you can create a video off of a 3D object. So someone won't be able to physically spin it themselves, but they can watch the object spinning and be able to see all aspects of it from side to side, and potentially even be able to augment that as they need to. This is one thing that's wonderful, is that 3D type of content, to be able to see not only the front, but the back, maybe the bottom, maybe the top. It allows for someone to, once again, ensure that they are buying what they want to buy. And this also, as you could point out, make sure that it's cutting down on the opportunity for people to return your products. Because a lot of the times what happens is people return a product when it didn't match their expectations of what they saw on the website. 3D can absolutely provide that, ensuring that you're providing them all the angles they need to see before they decide to put this into their cart and ultimately purchase. One other area that is important to point out is going back to that concept that I mentioned about the overall image to video concept. Notice here that you're able to do lots of these zoom and pan effects. You can create these flyover effects. And all you're ultimately doing is asking the system to programmatically zoom out, zoom in, Also a way to ensure that the spinning is happening on an ever-ending loop. There are many different ways to be able to create these types of video contents. And hopefully some of these are starting to tickle your mind a little bit and say, I know I have some great imagery. If I could just do this, this might create more engagement. Similarly, I have that great 3D object. How do I go ahead and make sure that that programmatically becomes animated content? One of the big pain points that you will find is around formatting. A lot of the times you're going to have modern browsers that are being used by your buyers, by your customers, the people that are experiencing your video. You also will have it where sometimes they're using the most archaic browsers that you could possibly think of. How do you ensure that that perfect 4K video that you went and spent hundreds of thousands of dollars to make, how do you ensure that that is able to be seen by everybody without bandwidth issues, without having necessarily the best optimized bandwidth that can come through, making sure that regardless of site speed and network speeds, how do they get your content? A lot of it actually comes to format, because you have modern content like MP4s, WebMs, but you also have many other versions that are either web-friendly or not web-friendly of video content. And what this ensures is that through the power of content delivery networks, you can say, deliver this at the most optimal format for every user's browser. And that's all you have to do is set it and forget it. And regardless if you're using Internet Explorer 6, because there still are people using that, all the way to the latest versions of Chrome and Firefox and Safari and Edge, it'll ensure that that video performs exactly the way that it should. It's a wonderful, wonderful feature, and lets you focus on what's most important: creating good content. The other area to point out with this, as we saw with the Surfer, is the concept of smart cropping. The one thing that you have no control over as a deliverer of video content is what their viewport is going to be for the person that's experiencing it. I could be watching this on my laptop, which would be more of a landscape format. I could be watching this on my phone, holding it. That's more of a portrait format. This is where, regardless of what that happens to be, you can ensure that the most interesting aspect, thanks to object detection, stays in frame the entire time. And also, even when it's going to be completely zoomed in and full screen. Notice that the lady in the red dress never truly leaves the frame, regardless of which I'm looking at, because of the power of AI associated with video you've already created. When we talk about that automatic video optimization effort, some of that is format, but it also, some of that comes into quality and compression, because some of those videos that are at 4K, they don't need to necessarily always need to be displayed at 4K. And this is where you can have it as one single source truth type of video, and then make sure that all of the different formats that needs to be delivered in, whether that's low res, whether that's standard definition, whether it's high definition, it can be able to be chosen upon based on user browser, user device. There's so many things that can be detected to ensure that your videos are displayed in the most optimal way. And what's great about this is that you can take that massive file and provide almost up to 80% of reduction, very simply, just by delivering at the best format and the right compression quality level right there on the edge. One of the things that you want to fix with this overall effort that we're talking about when it comes to optimization is what we call buffering. And I'm sure we've all experienced it. We all have seen it, where you're watching a piece of content and then suddenly you get this spinning circle, as we've defined it here, the beach ball of death. Well, the reason why that's not a good thing is that you ultimately are delaying the person's experience. They're expecting to see something and they're getting something else. They're expecting to see your great content, your amazing products. Instead, they're seeing a spinning circle, and they don't really know how much time it's going to take for that spinning circle to stop and get back to what's good. What that does mean is that 40% of those users that are looking at your content and your products, if your website takes more than 3 seconds to load, they will abandon. And it also means here that if we're looking at the overall bandwidth that is tied to these videos, 66% of the overall web pages are normally associated with that. So that's why video production is super important. But video post-production, including the delivery aspects that we're talking about, thinking about formatting, thinking about quality, This will ensure that your websites are as fast as possible without getting any buffering, without getting a slow loading experience, and ultimately having people go elsewhere for the information or the purchasing that they want to do. Some of that ties into this concept of adaptive bitrate streaming. What this ensures is that if someone is viewing the content, and typically when we talk about adaptive, we're talking about long form content, content that is more than a minute long in length. It is going to ensure that if we're starting to display this at 1080p, and let's say there's an issue with the user's network, it will drop down to be at 720p or 480p, and then jump back up once there is a better network connection. This is something that sometimes takes a lot of work to be able to say, how do we deliver this adaptively, but also ensure that this is the same piece of content we can use in other places. But with the power that's available to you today, you can easily do this just by setting certain parameters inside of a URL of your video, all the way down to just being able to flick a switch on the back end of a video player and ensure that adaptive bitrate streaming is something that is immediately possible to ensure that that buffering, that beach ball of death that I just mentioned, doesn't ever happen for the user. It just allows for quality and compression to go down and then back up as it needs to. The same concept could be applied for progressive streaming, and progressive streaming would typically be applied for video content that is less than a minute long in length. In these cases, some of these are going to be less than 10 seconds long. This is allowing for us to take the master video file, provide the overall progressive formatting, quality compression, as we mentioned, but then you can start including this on product display pages or even on overall product galleries that are going to be taking place. So that way someone can see the front, the back, the side of a hooded sweatshirt in this example, but also right next to it, see the picture of the model that's moving. Back to the points that Kim mentioned, how does the fabric lay on their body? How does this look with certain shadows on it? Is this the actual gray that I want it to be when I purchase this and put this on my own body? This is where we can complement this. And progressive is fantastic for fast loading experiences. The other thing that we're showing with this, of course, is product galleries. And you should be thinking about your product galleries to be more than just images. Many of the techniques that I've gone and highlighted so far, whether that's concatenation, whether that's zoom and pan, whether that's taking a 3D model and being able to show a video of it moving around, all of that can be shown in a product gallery. And it's where all of these different types of mediums, images, videos, 3D content should all be able to be shown within this. And you should also be able to make sure that you're always able to pull from a central repository. A lot of the cases where I see product galleries done well is where a team has things organized with tags and structured metadata, being able to say, these are the types of assets that should show up on this PDP versus this PDP. And they can do that through many different parameters. So it just happens programmatically, once again, at scale. So that way they don't have to think about each single PDP. If they know they have the right SKUs mapped to it, or you have the right tags attached to it, it will ensure that all of the correct imagery, videography, and more is showing up the way that it should. There's so many things to be thinking about with this. There's so many things to be thinking about this. And I want to end this before I turn this back over to Kim to talk more about some of the ways that this is going to be possible for you and ways it could be even possible for you to do today. But the thing is, video and purchasers, they're like peanut butter and jelly. They love to be together because, as we've shown you, purchasing happens after the video is shown. If it is shown in a way that ensures that it loads quickly, realistically shows the product, and also helps them to have that level of trust and authenticity to it. It is also important to note that the scaling efforts that are there, notice that this is actually a pretty aggressive number of what buyers are wanting. 6 photos and 2 videos on each single product display page. And if you're saying to yourself, I don't have that, once again, using some of those techniques to be able to use images, use 3D content, use other things that you have to be able to supplement and then also create videography against what is available are all things to be considering. But you should see in here very important statistics to say video adoption is highly important for you as a company that is also representing certain brands of that company, but also to say, as soon as you start making this plunge, Your purchasers will appreciate it. So Kim, let's tell them, how is it possible?
I can see I'm on mute. Absolutely. Thanks, Sam. So with Cloudinary technology, it's very possible to ensure that all of those assets that you've got are optimized simply and at scale, just like Sam has been highlighting. We integrate with all of the tools that you're likely already using today for website and mobile apps, whether it's project information management systems, so PIMS. We work with most of them, and we can create custom solutions for any of them that you happen to work with that we don't already natively integrate with. Plus, we work with some of the best content management systems, including ones like Contentful, if you want that truly headless experience, all the way across to something that's very tried, tested, and true, like WordPress. Also, to say it's a great thing that Cloudinary provides the opportunity to do social variants. So if you are working with a number of social media providers like X, like TikTok, like Instagram, you can easily create all of those variations on the fly, and even to ensure that they're created upon upload. You can set those templates and forget it. You'll get the variants that you need. Lastly, of course, our video players are super customizable. You can deliver things like with adaptive versus progressive, you choose. They're brandable to match the rest of your experience. They're adjustable to allow people to slow down or speed up the content or watch it again. And they're accessible. You can put in things like embedding subtitles and captioning to make sure that you're highlighting the elements that you need to. There's just a ton of things that are already available to you straight out of the box. The key here is that you can make your e-commerce experience better with technology that is absolutely in place today. So if you're thinking that you want to get more involved with video, but you're not quite sure how, hopefully we've given you a few ideas of where to start. Let's talk about some other companies that are already doing this, because you might be sitting here thinking, okay, theoretically, this is great, but I need a little more than this to start the discussion with my company again. So let's look at some of the biggest brands in the UK and fashion across Europe. Paul Smith. They were able to see a 45% sales conversion increase just by bringing video to their product display pages. 45% increase. That is a pretty big lift in terms of what the digital team was able to bring to the bottom line just by implementing video. If we look at companies like the Bleacher Report, which is tied to sports, news, and entertainment, they were able to start generating video highlights from the floor to website within minutes. This was previously taking a lot longer, which was driving them absolutely crazy, right? So just think about what that would mean for you if you could shoot and get it up on your website within a couple of hours or a couple of minutes. That's a game changer. It's exciting. Also, think about what it means from a competitive standpoint. If you're in a highly competitive position, one of the ways to make your product really stand out and get attention is through great videography. Rather than being the ones to struggle to highlight how great your product is, give your consumers and your potential purchasers the right element to satisfy those expectations that they already have. As Sam said, 6 images, 2 videos. They're already expecting that so that you can lead in your segment. Now, the next one, I'm sure you've all heard of, Adidas. It's one of the biggest brands in the world, and often you'll even find Sam wearing an Adidas polo. Not today, I think. But when you are trying to make sure that your production and your product listing work is getting done quickly, think about Adidas. They actually really sped up the amount of time that they were able to do this because it just made so much sense financially for them to do this. So when we think about video, I hope you can see that there's both emerging brands and large-scale, globally recognized brands that have already started embracing video and are doing it well. Brands love video and consumers expect to see video. Over 10,000 customers already trust Cloudinary and what we're doing with our video and imagery digital presence when it comes to websites, mobile apps, and overall software projects. So if you're sitting here listening today and you haven't quite heard the right elements for you to say, okay, yeah, let's talk, or I want to know more, maybe this is the little bit that you've been waiting for. one of the main reasons why all of these companies are thinking about this investment is because of the return that video can provide. It can be expensive and time consuming, as we've heard, but there are a lot of ways to mitigate that and bring the time consuming element down and the investment down by making smart choices on the post-production side. It's absolutely a key factor to think about. And it's a key factor to think about when you consider driving your ability for conversions and seeing that return that maybe your CFO is expecting to see or your CEO is expecting to see. Video is absolutely a catalyst, and hopefully there's enough here today that you are excited to see what you can do with video in a bigger, brighter, easier way. All right, let's stop there. I know we want to leave some time for Q&A. So Steve, do you want to guide us through how we might answer any questions and decide which question is being answered first?
Yeah. That first, just thanks for that presentation. That was great. I really enjoyed the way you tag teamed it there. And yeah, I think we should just jump into the questions because we have a number of them. So I'll just read them to you, and you can just go ahead and answer and decide who's the right person to answer each one. Let's start with a question from David Fitzel, who asks, when it comes to UGC, how are content rights managed if content is used in marketing material?
This is a great question. This is absolutely a great question. I think it depends on how deep your rights management needs to be. There's varying levels of this. So I've seen it before where essentially a customer can put in an upload widget, some type of mechanism to be able to allow a customer to upload a video or upload an image. As an example, if you've ever participated with uploading a profile picture, or maybe you've participated in dating apps, you've probably experienced things like this, where you have a dedicated, sometimes behind a login or password protected wall, for someone to be able to go and upload those things. And just simply having language on the widget itself to say, this is content that needs to be owned by you. This is content that obviously that you have taken. That can be a simple, easy solution. But I've seen it to the point where there are entire companies that are tied to rights management. And the wonderful thing is that many of them have very flexible APIs. So that way, essentially, you can build a workflow. One of the things that Cloudinary does provide is we do have a workflow management product called Media Flows. And I have seen where customers will essentially ping a service that does rights management to make sure that this is an authentic image or authentic video that has been taken by that user. And then only if then is it verified, then it is uploaded over to our service and then allowed to be transformed and delivered through many of the mechanisms that me and Kim have shown. So essentially, there's varying levels of it. And I think it's to say one size doesn't fit all for all types of organizations. But rights management is absolutely something to be thinking about with user-generated content to ensure that you're not accidentally delivering somebody else's content without being fully aware of what's happening in the process.
Great. So another one from Carrie Lee that came in the chat. So she says, great info, which certainly was. Do you have recommendations for tools for some of the alternative video creation ideas?
It's a great question. Kim, do you want to take this one?
Yeah. So do you mean for elements like transitioning images into videos? I just want to clarify this.
Yeah. Carrie, if you want to chime in, that sounds right. And that sounds like something I'd like to hear answered. So
sure. So as Sam was mentioning, one of the most common questions that we get is, I'm either new to video, we know that we need to do it, I just don't know how to take those first steps. And so being able to take your video and doing something using functions like pan and zoom, for example, where you can decide where you want to start the focus and you can zoom in or zoom out or move across the image is one of the easiest, fastest, easiest ways that most customers start using pre-video settings, but getting that really rich experience for the customers. So that's usually number one. Then the next one that they go to is taking a series of images and putting them together to create a short video reel. So it might be the crops where you say, here's the front, here's the side, here's the back, here's the bottom, here's the top, to show that, to be able to cut the transitions in smoothly. Those are all really fast, easy ways that you can take assets that you already have and get them up and running into a video-like experience quickly.
Great, great. And another question we had in the Q&A, just going back to the discussion of the ABR ladder and the adaptive bitrate encoding. Can you explain a little bit more about choosing ABR settings with Cloudinary and how much control would I have doing that?
It's a great question. And it's one that's actually continually evolving, because I feel that the technology that Cloudinary has provided with ABR has gotten progressively better and better and better every single year that I've been with the company. And it's now to the point where it's easy enough to just apply a certain transformation. So what that means is that you would put a parameter within the URL of your video, and by making sure that that parameter is there, it automatically will then start being able to essentially chunk the video to say, I'm going to deliver it in certain ways, and ensure that if it can't deliver it at that full high resolution area, then it moves down to the next area. So it's almost like it's anticipating the next step of the video. And that parameter for essentially getting really into the weeds is called SP auto. And so that means that we're able to set it and forget it with a lot of the concepts that we mentioned, but it's where you put it in there and then it immediately makes sure that all of that video is able to be done that way. There's lots of documentation available as well. And it also to say that if you want to be more precise with the exact streaming profiles that you are going to provide, that's also something you can get very, very granular with. So essentially, it can be as technical or as non-technical as you need it to be, knowing that the end goal is to make sure that someone gets the full video without having a buffering experience.
Great. Another one comes in from Fernando Campagnoli. How long does it typically take a new user to become proficient in using the main features of your product?
Well, I got to tell you, I know the answer to this one because I run customer education, as you can see from my title here, at the company. And I've been training Cloudinary customers for over 6 years now. So I can tell you that to get up and running with the product, it basically will end up taking you about less than, let's say, 30 minutes to really become understanding of some of the key things that we talked about. Being able to say, like, okay, I can see the immediacy, what my video was before and after when I want to create it as an animated piece of content, or provide it at the most optimal format. Those are all things that are immediately able to be done. And I feel like what's great about this is that we are a company that is very tied to APIs. So that means that if you need developers to help you with this at scale, then once again, it becomes a different type of training. Similarly, a lot of the customers that we do work with use us for digital asset management, meaning that all of our videos are stored in a central repository and then used to power their websites, their content management systems, or product information management systems, just as Kimberly had shown. So it is also to say here that I would say if you invest 30 minutes of your time, you should be able to see immediate results on a key video. And then a lot of those steps you took should be then things that you can even also immediately scale across other assets that you have within your repository.
Yeah. It's not uncommon for people to start doing one thing and then build a little bit more knowledge and do other things as they go along the way.
That's good to hear. So another one came in from Wen Q. Can smart cropping support live broadcasts?
It's a great question. Kim, do you want to take this one?
I think we actually can. Sorry, Sam, I might have to put this one back to you, but I think we actually can do smart cropping for live broadcasts.
Yeah, we most certainly can. So we do have live streaming products that allows for this to take place. And a lot of the powerful Cloudinary transformations that we went and showed, such as the object detection, those are all things that are absolutely possible. And it is also to say one area that would be always interesting to do is to test it against one of your own live broadcasts, because every live broadcast might be very different. It could be where you have a large crowd. It could be a concert. It could be a stand-up news type of broadcast. It could be, as Kim showed, a Bleacher Report. It could be something where you have lots of movement on the field. So it depends on what all this is going to be. But ultimately, the answer is yes. But it's always a great thing for us to be able to see exactly what you are creating and how that could be tied to Cloudinary. But the short answer is absolutely. Live broadcasts and a lot of the things that we talked about for scaling it are definitely possible with Cloudinary.
And one thing you mentioned was kind of using Cloudinary in tandem with other solutions, with other products, and we have a question about that. Patrick Burns asks, how seamless is the interface between Adobe products and Cloudinary?
Ooh, that's a great question. And I'll tell you, it's actually very seamless, because one thing that we do have is we have connectors for Adobe Creative Cloud products and Cloudinary. So what that ultimately means is it acts as a nice push-pull type of mechanism. So if you have a producer of content that's in an Adobe Creative Cloud product, let's say Photoshop or something along those lines, and they need to push that content to Cloudinary so that way it's then stored in a centralized location, the digital asset management system, they don't ever have to leave the Adobe products to do this. They can easily go ahead and just simply save, and then it will upload the file as is. So you have that single source of truth for that piece of content, regardless of where it's being created at. And this can be applied for many different types of Adobe products. So it is to say, it's a nice type of function where you can have everybody working off of a main area, but also in the formats that they want. I also will expand on that just a little bit, Patrick, is to say that we also play very well with Adobe products as well. So what that means is a lot of times when you're working with Photoshop files or other types of files that are going to be coming from Adobe, those can absolutely be stored within the Cloudinary system, and then take those files that are typically not web friendly, meaning they can't be displayed natively within a browser, and change them automatically to formats that would be able to be displayed natively. And you can even start to play with it where you can expose certain layers that may have been placed into those different types of images or videos. Similarly, you can, if you have clipping paths, you can have it where that clipping path is exposed or not exposed. Those can all be choices that can just be simply putting in a parameter into the URL, and then once again, scaling that across the enterprise. So great question, Patrick. But yes, Cloudinary and Adobe, they played very, very well together.
Yeah, well, that's great to hear for somebody like me that's been living in the Adobe Creative Cloud ecosystem for 20 years now, I think. But
well, and Steve, likewise, I think that's where a lot of creatives, they have been in that space, and they don't like the idea of having to learn something new that does something similar. But one thing that always resonates with people that are in the creative space is they hate the manual process. They hate having to do this one by one by one by one and keep going. Rather than doing that, you can create it once, what your transformations would be, what the output should look like, and you could scale that across 200,000 images or videos instantaneously. That's where, once again, the power of create it, the templates, take the concepts that you're building within these creative tools, and then how do you deploy that at scale? That's how you should see this in this way for this relationship.
okay, yeah, and you mentioned interchange with different CMSs too, and Patrick had a follow-up question about WordPress.
Oh my goodness, I love WordPress. And I will tell you, not only do we work well with WordPress, but I'm the author of our Introduction for Cloudinary for WordPress Administrators course. So I know I know all the intimate details of it. But it is to say what ends up happening with content management systems, as Kim mentioned, maybe with ones that are more cutting edge, headless, like the Contentfuls of the world, all the way to tried and true WordPress, is a lot of the ways that Cloudinary works, it becomes your new media library. It ensures that when you go searching for an image or a video to put onto that page or post, you don't have to go hunting through the CMS or even have to worry about, do they have access to the CMS? Everything is living in that central repository, and then you're able to bring it through, plus all the power of transformations to ensure the optimizations are there that also can come through. On top of that, one of the things that we've also seen people use this for, and this comes right out of the box with a WordPress plugin, is to replace a lot of the product gallery features that WooCommerce has from a default standpoint, and then bring in what Cloudinary provides for a much more optimized experience in video loading experience, as well as the aesthetics of it too. So it is to say, regardless of what CMS you're using, regardless of what PIM system you're using, Cloudinary definitely plays with really well. I like to call us the Switzerland of that area, because we work with everybody. But it is to say that if you are using WordPress, there is an out-of-the-box solution today, and there is an hour-and-a-half course that you can take for free as a Cloudinary user that I teach and walk you through each part of the steps.
Okay, well, that was a lively Q&A session. That looks like all the questions that we have. So I think we'll probably wrap it up now. But thanks so much, Kim and Sam, and thanks to Cloudinary. It's been a great session, and the audience has been really engaged with this. And before we go, just the walk-up music that you heard before we got started was Willie Mitchell's "Turn Back the Hands of Time," and our gift card winner, who correctly guessed it first, was Paul Fileo. So Paul, watch your email for information on how to claim your prize. And So we will be back in a half hour with our next session. Now it's personal, AI and streaming personalization. So we hope to see you all there. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye.